Hello, everyone. This is Daniela, the founder and the host for the Still Standing podcast, which is a part of the Still Standing Together series that includes this podcast, support groups and workshops for women, an online community of positivity, and apparel. And if you listened to episode 1, you heard that I started this a few months ago. And the podcast was designed to be a way for us to follow up with our attendees from our support groups and workshops. And this was also a way to reach out to more people to help them while they're going through any struggles or challenges in their lives. You know, it's hard for us to see the light during the struggle, and what really had helped me was talking to people, talking to therapists, talking to a mental health professional, whether it was traditional or non-traditional, meeting up with other women in my position who are maybe entrepreneurs, who are artists. For others, maybe it's mothers, maybe it's people who are transitioning in some way or another. Maybe they're moving or relocating to another city to live in. Maybe they just need a change, or, maybe it's the uncontrollable. Something has happened that we just can't prepare for. I wanted to create this community to support everybody so that they had resources and tools and go-tos and honest talk, honest conversation, honest support, and openness to make them feel as though they're not alone. It's important that whatever I do through these podcasts or through any of these resources through Still Standing, that there's a sense of togetherness and there's a sense of reliability, but there's also a sense of self-discovery. Hello, my loves, and welcome back to Still Standing Podcast. We are here with more exclusives from our amazing community that we have found of coaches and therapists and spiritual guides and all non-traditional and traditional resources for you to help you get through whatever it is that you're going through. And there are people out there who can help you to work through whatever it is that is keeping you back from living the most happiest life that you can possibly live. So for episode 13, we are speaking with Pamela Campbell. Pamela J. Campbell is a motivational speaker, author, and life coach driven by tenacity, hope, and divine spirit. Pamela, who was born in the Ivory Coast and brought to the U.S. at the age of 2, openly shares her experience of surviving a decade of emotional and physical abuse. Finally, as a 16-year-old, she escaped this life of torment and placed herself into the New York foster care system. Pamela credits this decision with saving her life. She shares her story of abuse and trauma and how it affected her life in candid detail, in the hope that it will inspire and impact others who have suffered the way she did. She is very passionate, which you will all hear in this episode, about transformational work. She's also supporting others to tap into their superpowers so that they can create new possibilities in their life. A little bit more about Pamela, which I love that she shares, is she lives in Harlem, New York, and she has a BA in criminal justice from John Jay College, and has been advocating on behalf of youth in foster care for the past 15 years. That is so incredibly admirable that she was able to, as you've probably heard some say, turn her mess into her message. And she's able to be resilient and overcome lots of hardship in her life, but she doesn't stop. She doesn't let what happened to her define her. And she's going to share with us a lot of perspective on her story and her work in healing herself, taking back her power, and finding that trust back into her world to really continue to live life on her terms, as well as recognize that finding our true beliefs are what is going to work for us. I really encourage everybody who's listening to take the time to follow through her life story. And in the second half, she'll really tap into that transformational work and advice on how she was able to work on loving herself and how you can work on loving yourself, find your self identity, confronting who you are, taking time for yourself, working with feelings of anger, confusion, making yourself comfortable with vulnerability, allowing yourself to feel feelings, and helpful perspectives on how to have loving relationships that you want. One of the things that she shares, which is really powerful in my eyes, is forgiveness is for us, not the other person. You cannot be in a relationship with someone who does not want to heal with you. How many times have we put blame on ourselves for expectations, for being hurt or mistreated by others in our lives? But Pamela helps us to recognize that you have a choice, and she shares this and every message throughout her story. And she'll share with us strategies and approaches to focus on what you choose and to continue to live that life that you want to live, not confined, not defined by the trauma that you've gone through. Listening to her really brought me such peace and comfort and hope. And it's encouraged me to break down my own stories so that I can do, as Pamela suggests, make new narratives for ourselves. So I hope that listening will do this for you, bring you to peace and comfort and hope, and help you to pull back those layers of who you are and of loving yourself. Hi, Pamela. How are you today?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for doing this. I really, really appreciate you reaching out and wanting to be a part of Still Standing Together. So thank you.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Of course, of course. So I gave a little intro about you, but I really would love if you could just delve right into your story and just tell our listeners about, your intense childhood and how you've grown from that.
Okay. So I was born in the Ivory Coast in West Africa. My dad brought me to this country at the age of 2. And from age 6 to 16, my father both emotionally and physically abused me. The abuse was so bad that I attempted suicide when I was 13 years old. I just couldn't understand why I was living a nightmare, right? The pain, the emotional pain, the physical pain, I just couldn't understand at 13 years of age why my father hated me so much. And for me, in my mind, I made up that it was just easier for me to not be here than to endure what was going on at home. And so I tried suicide when I was 13. And by the time I was 16, I knew that my father and I had come to an impasse. So I was 16 at the time, my sister was 8. And so that morning, literally, we ran into the New York foster care system. And so foster care literally saved my life. And for that, I will always, always, always be grateful. Yes, I entered foster care and I was safe, quote unquote, but I wasn't free, right? I was still a prisoner of the trauma, of the pain. So I entered foster care at 16, and it was very, what's the word I'm looking for? I was angry, and I think angry is an understatement.
Sure.
When you've gone through so much emotional and physical pain, whether it was the pounding of beatings on my back or slaps on my face, it didn't compare to the emotional pain of being told that you're stupid and dumb like your mother, that you're ugly, and that you would never amount to anything in life without a man. Those were seeds that my father didn't realize he had been planting in my heart, and that it would show up in different ways as I grew up. And I didn't know that at the time, right? And so I was very angry. But I'm so grateful. I had such an amazing group of friends that nourished me, cared for me, and gave me the one thing that I had always wanted: love. Love and acceptance, right?
Yes.
I had 2 awesome foster homes. The first home, they were, God bless them, they were an old couple in Queens. I gave them a run for their money. I mean, I was 16. It was like my first taste of like freedom, right? So I was always on the phone. That was their thing with me. I was always on the phone. And so I was like, okay, but otherwise, I was a good kid. I didn't give them any trouble. They didn't adopt me because I wasn't there with them long enough Again, they were an older couple. They were close to retirement, so they were moving to Florida. And unfortunately, I had to be placed in another foster home.
Okay.
So I was. I was placed in Brooklyn with who I refer to as my Aunt Pumpkin. She raised me for 4 years. And it was definitely a process in learning how to accept and receive love. Because when you don't love yourself, right, you don't know how to receive it from other people. It's like, what's happening? What's going on here? Why are you hugging me?
Right.
What's happening?
Right.
But she never gave up on me. She never gave up on me. And I'm grateful for that. And teachers and counselors, I mean, everyone was just so supportive, right? I just became everyone's adopted child my senior year of high school. So I had good experiences while I was in the system, but I was still struggling with finding who I was, my identity. I needed answers, right? So at age 24, I believe there's this saying that goes, you can run, but you can't hide. And so at age 24, I had a mental breakdown. I everything that I was running from, everything that I was running from just came crashing down on me. And there was nowhere to run. There was, like, literally, I had nowhere to go. And it's such a crippling feeling. It's debilitating, right? Because for me, I had aspirations of becoming an attorney. I was going to be the next Marsha Clark of foster care, right? I wanted to punish everyone and put people behind bars that beat their children and mistreated their children. And so I didn't have time to focus on me. Why would I do that? Right. Take care of me. I have so many kids who are waiting for me, right? And so I feel like God speaks to us. God definitely works in mysterious ways, and I learning that God speaks to us through different experiences, right? Right. And so at 24, I had to make one of the hardest decisions I ever had in my life, right? And so that was having therapy, going to see a therapist, which was hard because I was raised to believe that therapists are the devil. They're out to get you. You don't do that. And I don't know if it's a cultural thing, to be honest with you. But this is what I was fed. This was the belief, right? And even though I had left home and knew that my father was he was operating from his trauma, which I didn't know at the time, I still held on to that belief until I had no choice and I broke down. And so I saw my first therapist. I remember, man, she was an older woman. She was so protective of me. Oh my God. I felt so safe. And even the way we met, it was so divine how we were brought together. And so I knew that this was the person that I was supposed to be able to help with the healing process, right? Right. And so I was able to do that, did therapy, which was great. Then I was able to return back to school. I had taken a year off. I had taken a year off from John Jay College of Criminal Justice, and went back to school. A year later, graduated, interned for Hillary Clinton. Like, everything was just amazing, and I was able to do that because I had taken the time for me, right? Even though it was very hard to do. And I want to say about a couple of years after that, I still was in this place of knowing, like I knew there was more. There had to be a reason for all the things that had transpired, right? And so being in this space of wanting more, a good friend of mine called me and said, you know what, I know you want to write a book. I know you want to share your story. I know you want to do this. I know there's fear, but I think like this workshop can really help you. And because he was a childhood friend, he knew what I had went through, I trusted him. So I was like, oh man, workshops, people, I don't know, it's not my thing, right? Because I'm still angry, right? Right. And even when I wasn't trying to be angry, I was still angry, right? People experienced me, they would be like, you're so intimidating, and you're so this, and you're so that, and I'm like, whatever, right? Because I just wasn't in the space for the feedback. Mm-hmm. And so I remember telling myself, okay, well, I trust this friend, and so I'm going to take this workshop and see what happens. And so I remember it was actually a Halloween weekend, October 2010, if I'm not mistaken. And I walked into this room of about 60 people. And I remember thinking like, well, why am I here? But I knew that I was supposed to be there because there's some of the people in the room either had worked for children's services or worked in the foster care industry that I had been a part of. So I knew I was supposed to be there, as scared as I was, right? And so for me, those 4 days were so powerful because I was able to tap in and really connect to the power of choice. I didn't realize that I had been choosing to be angry. I had been choosing to hold on to the pain and not wanting to forgive. It was a choice. And I didn't realize that. No one had ever said that to me. I didn't know that I was choosing, right?
Right.
Versus being a victim and it's all me focused and I don't have a choice in it, right? Giving away my power of choice to others. After that weekend, I remember thinking, okay, well, I need more of this. I need more. I need to dig. And so I did the next level. My mentor at the time, who we became good friends, she helped me pay for the course, right? She was like, man, you seem less angry and this may be working. I want to help you. And I was like, yes. So she helped me pay for the next level. And it's hard to put into words, but it was just so healing and so powerful beyond words, where I was able to start removing some of the masks that I had been hiding behind and being able to be comfortable with vulnerability, because I was taught vulnerability is weakness, right? You don't show vulnerability, it's weak. You don't give your power away, right? You don't cry in front of people. Even as a child, when I was being beat, I wasn't allowed to cry. I would have to wait till I went into my room and then I cried underneath the pillow, right? So for the first time, I was actually allowing myself to feel feelings. Because here's the thing, for so many years, not feeling is what kept me alive, right? And so now I'm in a space where I had to remember, well, I survived that. I'm no longer in a life or death, fight or flight situation. It is okay to feel. We are meant to feel as human beings.
And I'm sure it was a very foreign feeling to you.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like, what is this? What's happening? I can't control this. No, can't do it, right? But it felt so freeing. I think when I did that workshop, the second part, I think it was the first time in like years I had ever cried. Thinking back at like how much I had been holding in was just mind blowing, right? And so the third level, leadership, comes, and I'm like, okay, I got this, right? So leadership, I created a radio show, I created a nonprofit, I did all these different things that I didn't even know I was capable of, right? So I think that leadership taught me that, or it reminded me of the leader that I was born to be, that I hadn't connected with. And so I graduated in 2011. And in 2011, I remember being like, man, this work, it resonates. I love it. I was coaching like teammates, just coaching, not realizing that I had been holding space for people my whole life, right? Because I always had friends that would always be like, oh, you give great advice. Or there would literally be people in high school. I remember I had gotten to foster care, and like people would come to the back specifically for me to ask for advice. And I'd be like, I'm the one in foster care. Like, I need advice. You know what I'm saying? But I always knew the answer. I always knew how to guide them, but I didn't know how I knew that, right? And so after graduating from this transformational workshop, I realized, oh, well, I want to coach, right? I love transformation. Like, I love what this is opening up. I was able to learn how to forgive my mom, my dad. I co-wrote a book, like shared my story for the first time. Like, these are things like I never had the courage to do until I had taken this workshop and really stepped into like my power, right?
Right.
And so I decided, okay, yeah, you know what? Part of my vision is to be able to, I want kids in foster care and those who stem from that system to know that they matter and that they're loved, right? And so I am going to bring this to that community. And so I looked into different programs, even though I feel like, yes, training definitely is important, but at the same token, too, I feel like for me, this is part of my gift. This was given to me, right?
Right. It
And
came
so,
naturally.
exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And so I did end up getting training. I went to this program down in DC, which was amazing. It was kind of funny though, because I was sitting there and it's like, I already knew the answer. Like, it was like, this is it. Are we done? But it was so much fun, right? And so I knew then I was like, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. Now, at the time, I was working corporate America. I had been there at the firm for so many years. It was an amazing experience. There were so many people who taught me so many things about life, and people who raised me there. Some people don't even realize they were raising me. So I was still at the firm at the time, and I was like, you know what? I just want to like create. What do I get to create? What do I want to create? What do I want to do? Right. And so that led me to, okay, well, why am I here? What is my sole purpose? Right. What am I here to contribute to the world? And everything that has happened for me, not to me. And so how do I use that and tap into like what I want to create in the world? Right.
Right.
And so it came to me and I was like, okay, I meditated and literally like, my spirit guides were like, you need to start coaching. And it's like, oh, okay. Now, granted, this organization that I did the workshop with, I was coaching left and right on a volunteer basis, right?
Okay.
But then it's like, no, man, you get to like get paid to do this, right? Because I love coaching, and it was an amazing 90 days with these people, whether it was family, finance, weight, I was just having a ball, right? And to this day, a lot of them keep in contact. I'm like, these are my babies. Like, I'm gonna check in. How's it going? What's going on? Are you still applying the tools? And it came so easy. It was effortless. Like I could coach all day. You know what I mean? It's just fun, and it's rewarding, and such an honor to be able to be a part of someone's process when they are kind of tapping into their own superpowers and figuring out what's working, what's not working, and just to be able to cheer people on and see when they have those aha moments. To me, that's why I do it.
Right.
So I quit my corporate job last year, May, and I'm starting my business as a transformational life coach, public speaker. I'm still speaking. I still share my story, but now I want to add topics like forgiveness and transformation and possibility. So yeah, I created Pamela J. Campbell LLC. So I was like, oh, I feel like an adult. And I also facilitate workshops. So I love to be able to create space for healing, for people to be able to check in with like their beliefs, to see what's holding them back from what they say they want, right? And so there's a workshop that I do, turning pain into possibility. I love it.
Yeah, I love it too. So I'm so happy you're doing all this. I'm going to jump in because I have to tell you, and I didn't want to interrupt because there are so many, I don't know if you've ever listened back to your own story, but there are so many times that you just continue to grow and overcome, that I just commend you so much because I commend you, I applaud you, and it's amazing to hear. Again, that's why I didn't want to interrupt you, Pamela, because you, even at a young age, you took in so much, you endured so much, and it's so inspirational to listen to you talk and then just see the pattern of like you endured a lot, you went through it, and then you came out wanting to help. You came out wanting to make not only yourself better and heal yourself, but also how can you do that to help other people? And so I just think that that's just so commendable and admirable. So thank you. I had to kind of jump in because your story really is just, it's incredible what you went through. You also said about when this was happening to you, the abuse and things like that. You said, why is this happening? We take the blame on ourselves. So what was that healing process like to understand the uncontrollable, or understand that like other people's actions we are not to blame ourselves for that?
So, um, first, thank you for your kind words. I appreciate that. Um, because there was a time where I would tell my story, but I wasn't connected to it. And so now I'm in a different space where I'm like, oh, yeah, I, I overcame that.
Yes.
So I'm always humbled and appreciate when people can offer kind words like that. So to answer your question, I feel that, so as a child, we don't know why people behave the way they do, right? And so because we don't have that information, we don't have that knowledge, it's it's safe to assume that we're just going to automatically, a child automatically going to just blame themselves, right? And so when you hear things like, you're stupid and dumb, or I wouldn't have to cook, if you weren't here, I wish you weren't born, I wish you were a boy, things like that being told to me on a daily basis was challenging, right? And so I didn't know at the time. At the time, I just blamed myself, right? I just automatically thought, okay, well, I've done something wrong. It's me, right? And of course, that also shows up differently in life later on, which we're not aware of, right? So I think through the healing process, once I started that healing in 2011, which led me on this path of spirituality, I'm able to see things differently and say, hey, you know what? My father had his trauma. Because here's the thing, our parents are parents. Yes, they're our parents, and we have made this image of them that they are superheroes and they are flawless. No, they are human too. And I had to really check in with that and remind myself, okay, well, my father had trauma. And unfortunately, he didn't do the work. So the trauma then I had to experience the trauma that he went through because he wasn't doing the work to be able to create something different. And there's another reason why I'm so passionate about transformational work, because me doing the work, it's not just about me. It's about my daughter one day, her children one day, and just changing generational curses and generational cycles of abuse, right? And so later on, I was able to be in a space where, okay, well, that had nothing to do with me. That was all him and his trauma, right? And let me be clear too, it's not to excuse his behavior. Because a lot of people have always asked, how did you forgive? Why did you do that? I could never. Well, what was the alternative?
Right.
Me being upset about someone that was doing the best that they could. Because here's the other thing too, people do the best they can with what they have at their level of consciousness. And so when I thought about that, how can you be mad?
Right.
They're doing the best they can.
And it would only take away, as you mentioned earlier, about your power. It only would make you continue to hurt and make you feel powerless.
Exactly. Forgiveness is definitely for us, not for the other person.
Okay, that's I love that you're saying that, because that was one of the questions that I wanted to ask you, is how does it tie into your story? And I'm sure it wasn't like one day you woke up and you were like, I forgive.
Absolutely.
Were there tools that you used to help you? I know you mentioned therapy. Was there anything, and the workshop and your program you went through, but was there anything else or anything you still use on a daily basis that's a tool to remind you of that forgiveness?
In my experience, forgiveness it's like an onion. There are layers to it, right? And so I'll be honest, there were times where people would ask if I had forgiven, and I probably said yes, and maybe it felt right in that moment, but there was still a part of me in my being that probably didn't, right? Maybe it sounded right. Then there were so many times where I forgive and we have a relationship, and then he do the same thing again, right? And I had to come to a point where I had to let it go, right? Because I've realized that I cannot be in a relationship with someone who does not want to heal with me. Because if you ask my father, in his mind, he did nothing wrong. I remember the first time I reached out after so many years, after doing this workshop, and I said, I forgive you. And he said, forgive me for what?
Wow.
And, for me, I felt like, am I crazy? Did I make up those 10 years? Is he serious right now? Right? And so it took a while for me to get to a point of forgiveness and to finally really free myself. And I want to point out something too that I don't think people recognize or talk about. Unforgiveness will live in your body, right? And so 2017, I had to have surgery. I had fibroids removed. I had 10 fibroids the size of golf balls that were in my uterus.
Oh my goodness.
And I take responsibility for not taking care of it sooner. I'm just not really a big advocate of medication. So I am thinking it's like essential oils and just trying to find other methods, right? So I took too long for me to be able to use other methods. And, it was always, I'm busy, I'm this. I was too cool for school to take care of myself physically, right? And so having that experience was a reminder of how unforgiveness will live in your body. Because spiritually, fibroids, it's a manifestation of resentment.
Wow.
And so, of course, that makes sense, right?
Absolutely.
And so when I saw, so I see like a lot of healers and spiritual chiropractors, different practitioners. And so that has also helped with the process too, to be able to support me in seeing things from a spiritual perspective and see what's going on. Therapy was very supportive in the process, in this healing process. I feel like people have to figure out what works for them, right? In the sense of, I started out with like self-help books. I remember reading The Secret. I was like, is this garbage or is this real? And then these workshops, which were similar to The Secret, I was like, oh, I can create, I am a manifester. And then from that, it led to like A Course in Miracles, Marianne Williamson, who I love, right? Gabby Bernstein, all these amazing beings who I was finally open to. I was in space. It was resonating. It made sense. I didn't have to question whether, was I crazy? Am I losing it? Is it me? I had to go through a lot of like, she's woo-woo, she's crazy when you're working in a corporate environment, because people don't understand that, right? People are caught up in society's norms and the matrix and what you should or should be doing. And I'm the most non-conventional person you will ever meet, right? I will wear something, I don't care if it was 3 seasons ago. I'm wearing it. If I like it, I'm going to wear it. Oh my God, you're outdated. And I still look cute. Like, I'm okay with that.
Yes.
Therapy, self-help books, any type of transformational work, like all of these different things were very important in my healing process, right? And I feel like tools, what may work for me may not work for you, right? And so my offer would be for people to like really jump in and try different things and see what resonates with them, right? Because once upon a time, A Course in Miracles, I was like, I'm not reading that big ass book. But now, like, I love it and I can't put it down, right? And so it's a process. You have to wait till like you're in a space to be able to receive information and tools that will support you, right? Also, I'm a firm believer in that quote: when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. And I feel like every time I was ready, okay, the teacher is coming in the form of a person or a book or a workshop or whatever form that God brought it to me, because I was ready to take that next step.
And hearing you talk about your story, something I wrote down is that it seems like you continuously, after you took that first step going into foster care, it seemed as though your path continuously kept going along, the process of getting your life back. So it was really interesting and like hopeful. I think it will give people hope. It gave me hope just to hear you say, after I did that, and then I was working on loving myself, and then I was this and this, and you were able to continue to get on a path that was right for you. And I do think it all ties into that process you mentioned earlier of loving yourself. So you also mentioned about vulnerability too, and I think that's a big piece to us all, and I found for myself, healing. So with that though comes a lot of trust, and I did want to just ask you, what's your thoughts, because you came from a household that maybe might have set you up to find it hard to trust in others, that they were going to be there to help you. So when you stepped into foster care and then began to start this support system, how were you able to trust?
And it's so funny because I was talking to one of my clients about this exact thing last week, right?
Wow. Okay.
And so here's what I've learned about trust. Trust starts with yourself. And so, yes, it was scary because, I mean, when you've been told that, like, you're stupid and you're dumb and you're this, it's like, well, can I trust myself? Am I smart enough to trust myself, right? And whether it was the abuse or attempting suicide, being sexually assaulted at 17, all of those experiences, I feel like if I had trust in myself, I could be able to trust and use discernment in each of these situations. Trust starts with self, right? And so, like I was telling a client last week, we as beings have all the answers, all the tools within ourselves, right? We lack nothing, right? But the piece is to really trust that and to practice trusting ourselves. Once we trust ourselves, it's so easy to use discernment to know who to trust and who not to trust. And so, yes, vulnerability is very important. But what I've learned is not everyone deserves your vulnerability. You have to be very careful with who you are being vulnerable with, right? So, I have had practice with, okay, well, what do I trust the situation? So figuring out what the situation is and kind of feeling it out, right? How does this feel right? Does this not feel right? And trusting that I know the answer and what's best for me. Because at the end of the day, we all are powerful beings, right? Like I said, and we have what we need. It is a process. Now, especially if you've been through trauma, of course, you're going to question yourself. You're going to doubt yourself. I have been through that more times than I can count, right? But I had to, because I was committed to the work, committed to being my best self, right? Connecting with my higher self, that I wanted to kind of throw away the layers of doubt, the layers of fear, and get back to me. Because what I've learned is whether it is whatever traumatic experience that you've experienced in life, right? It may sound crazy, but bear with me for a minute. It is happening for you, not to you, to help you get back to who you are. And so at the end of the day, who we are is love, right? And so when someone's being rude or nasty or mean or this or that, that's not who they are, right? It's their experiences, it's their having a bad day, it's whatever it is, right? And so, like, my intention is always to always practice love and compassion with whoever it is I come in contact with. Because at the end of the day, we are love. Now, when you experience a traumatic experience, all the anger and fear and all of that is being, is covering the essence of who we really are, right? And so I feel like when we go through these experiences, getting back to, I feel like it's like coming back home to ourselves, love. And it's a process. So we have to trust ourselves that, okay, I've made the right decision. And I feel like even if you feel like you did and it wasn't the right decision, it was still the right decision because everything happens the way it's supposed to. So even if you feel stuck or nothing's moving, nothing's happening, you're exactly where you're supposed to be. And so we get to trust, okay, well, I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. And I'm a creator. So what is it that I want to create next?
Wow, you're bringing me to tears a bit because it's so, you're so, listening to you talk brings me such peace and comfort. So thank you for that because, and then just thinking about where you're at now is just brings so much hope. So I I don't want to apologize for being emotional, but
no, of course not.
I really appreciate everything you're saying and the perspective of it when you as you said, when you break it down, it comes down to love. And I'm it hits home. So I know that everything you were just saying was very impactful. And so thank you for sharing that because you are amazing for how much you've overcome and how much you're doing for others. So this is good work. So let's get into the work that you do. You help to support individuals in creating the life that they want by helping them to change their narrative. So can you tell me a little bit more about those tasks or steps that you would go through with any individual or when you're speaking to help them get to that place of loving themselves, that place of self-confidence and strength?
So I have, so I do like a one-to-one coaching program, right? That is 12 weeks. And so I invite people who are ready for like transformation. And it's not for everybody, right? So like you have to be ready to like bring down the masks and be able to jump in and like really get down to the nitty-gritty, right? That's why I always say, you know, if it resonates, great. If it doesn't, maybe it's not your time. And that's okay. Because I believe that I have client soulmates out there that are waiting for me to show up and to serve them. And everybody's not for everybody, right? And the great thing about coaching is everybody's a coach, right? So if I don't know somebody, if I'm not right, like, maybe somebody else is, right? So I say that to say that if there's anyone out there that's like, oh, I want to be a coach, but there's too many. No, there's not enough for what's going on in the world. Along with learning how to trust myself, I've also been learning how to trust my intuition. So I'm very intuitive. And I didn't know that growing up because there were certain times where I'm like, well, how do I know this? And so now that I know that I'm intuitive and these gifts, I use that in my coaching as well, right? So my coaching has like a spiritual aspect where I'm trusting spirit and my guides to guide my clients, right? So for example, I have a client now. He's so adorable. He's 23 years old. He's so powerful, right? He's so powerful. And we had a very interesting session last week where I was like, okay, I'm going to trust that I am, because coaching is not about giving you the answers. It's about guiding you. You have the answers within you. My job is to guide you, asking the right questions to the answers that are within you, right? And to support you by seeing your blind spots that you may not be open to seeing, or that you don't even know that you don't know that you don't know. You have them, right? And so he said something about there was like this rush. I'm like, you're 23 years old and you want to change the world and you want to do all this by noon, right? And we're talking and he's like, okay, I'm going to be vulnerable. And I was like, okay. And he said, well, if I don't do this by 30 or before 30, then I'm a bum. I was like, okay. I said, where did that come from? And he was like, that's what I was told. And I'm like, okay, well, is that a fact or is it a belief? He was like, huh. And I was like, and is it working for you? Because here's the thing. As humans, we're so on automatic that we're not really taking the time to use discernment and realize whether something is a fact, a belief, and, oh yeah, I do this, I'm doing that, but is it working for you? Because if it's not working for you, if you're not getting the result that you want, then your way is obviously not working, right? So that's where I come in and I'm like, okay, well, all right, what if we did this? Or what's possible if you let go of that belief, right? So it's kind of like guiding people to like that end goal. You say you want love. Okay, well, you want love. What is it that you created? Like, what is a story around love that has you still single, right? And what are you willing, like, how are you willing to show up? Who are you willing to be to have this turn out where you can share your life with someone else as you say you want to? Because here's the thing. People say they want a lot of things, but if you really want to know what people are committed to, look at the things that they have in their life. Right? So people are like, oh, well, so single people are committed to being single. Because if you wanted to be with someone, you would be with someone.
I love that perspective.
And sometimes we don't even know or realize what is it that's like, what's holding us back? What is the belief, right? So like I said, there are things that we know. You and I are having this interview right now. The sky is blue. Mm-hmm. Then there are things that we don't know, that we don't know, that we don't even know we don't know. That's why I love transformational work, because it's like, oh, it's like that aha moment, that light bulb, that like, right? It's like that woman that's like, oh, well, I've been cheated on by 3 men. you're the common denominator. So it can't be them. What are you doing? Why are you creating these men that are cheating on you? So what story have you made up? What is your expectation around men? And what are you willing to let go so that you can be in a loving, joyful, whatever it is that my clients come up with? I want to be in a sexy, honest, loving, joyful relationship. Great. It starts with you at the end of the day. So what are you willing to let go of? What are you willing to create, do differently, be, right? Like, who are you being? It's in the being. So I love coaching. And as far as the workshops are concerned, it's experiential learning where you're going through a series of activities and we're kind of like breaking down what that story is. So like my story is, okay, well, my father both physically and emotionally abused me. So what's the new narrative? Because I experienced that, I am now able to support other people who have been through similar situations and be able to advocate on behalf of kids in the foster care system.
Wow.
See how you can it's all like how you see things.
Yeah. And your perspective is very eye-opening. And you mentioned that you work with people and breaking it down. And so for the listeners, I'm so happy that they get to hear this, because I do think, and myself included, I fall victim to this where I will block, and I like to say, I'm in my self-sabotaging mode, and so I think the more and more we hear these things and hear different perspectives, it is going to help all of us to break it down to where that change needs to happen. That's what it sounds like. Am I on the right track with
absolutely.
that?
It's like it's a belief that may have served you. It may have worked before, but maybe it's not working now, right?
Right.
And again, depending on whatever, because we all have a story. Whatever our story is, at some point, it is going to show up in life. And it may not be in our best interest. It may not be working, but we have to be able to, we won't always recognize how it's showing up, but it will show up. So traumatic experiences, I feel like they're always going to be there, but it's how we are in relationship to it, right? And I'm grateful for support and love and the work that I've done, but the work is never ending. Like, I want people to really understand that we are always going to be a work in progress. And at the end of the day, going back to trusting ourselves, inside of trusting ourselves, loving ourselves, knowing that we are perfect, whole, and complete just as we are, right here, right now, in this moment. The work, at least for me in my experience, is because there are times where like I'm super hard on myself, right? And that comes from childhood. My father was a perfectionist. And somehow that trait, I adopted that trait. And so now I can't say it's my dad being hard on me. It's me being hard on myself because of that experience as a child. And so my work is to check in and say, hey, you know what? No, I'm doing the best I can with what I have in this moment. And 2 minutes from now, 3 minutes from now, 4 seconds from now is a new moment. And so what am I choosing in this new moment? And even choosing not to choose is also a choice, right? Because I remember when I was in that victim mentality where it was like, oh, I have to, poor me, and this happened. And it's like, no, take back your power. I choose, right? I choose are two powerful words, because everything that we do, going back to, it's a conversation of like taking responsibility for our actions. And I know as a teenager, I didn't want to take any responsibility for my actions. So it was easy to just be like, no, I was made, or, the stuff that we make up that other people are making us do something we don't. No, we're powerful beings with the power of choice, and we get to choose what it is that we want. And remember that in every moment, it is a new opportunity to choose something different.
You actually answered my next question for you, which was, how do you continue to live on your own terms? So that is, you use that I choose, you choose, and it's your choice, and you take ownership is what it sounds like too.
Absolutely. So, ownership, responsibility. And here's another piece too I want listeners to know and really take in. Whatever has happened to you, you are not your trauma, right? I think one of my biggest lessons in 2017, I was like, man, trauma is real. It is real. When I thought about all the things that had shown up in my life when it came to relationships and men and what I had made up, it's because I remember like I would not date black men for a long period of time, and I had to check in and be like, well, what's that about, right? And so I finally had this breakthrough. I was like, oh, well, they weren't safe because they reminded me of my father, and I made up that every black man was going to beat me like my father did. And once I had that breakthrough, I was like, oh wow, okay. And it was just so liberating in so many ways where it's like, oh well, I made that up. I can let that go and make up something else, right? Where now I have male African American friends, and we have like amazing relationships, right? And even in some of those relationships, like some of my daddy stuff was coming up and some of their mommy stuff was coming up. But I'm grateful that I have friends who are also doing this work where we can do the work together and we can do our own separate work, but come together and be able to create supportive and loving relationships where we get to support each other in our process and know that it's a journey, right? But like people who are suffering from depression or whatever disease, right? You are not the illness. And also remembering that any illness, so disease is a mind that's not at ease. I'm a firm believer our bodies were created to heal itself. And so that period of time in my life where I was very depressed, it was stuff that had to come up to be healed, right? And so we live in America, right? Like, yeah, you're going to be depressed. If you're watching the news, if you're following what's going on,
yeah, absolutely.
Of course it's going to be depression, right? But know that that depression it does not define you. It does not define you. It cannot confine you unless you allow it to, right? You are whole, perfect, and complete despite whatever has happened. And know like it is the journey, not the destination. And as long as you keep the commitment to yourself, to being better, the best is yet to come. The best, I am a firm believer, the best is yet to come.
That's amazing. And you have your growth is incredible. I just have to tell you, it's so incredible. And you actually just shared so much valuable information to use as like a self-talk, because I'm big on self-talk, and I'm sure you are too with mindset and things like that. Is there anything you could leave our Still Standing community with that helps you to, a mantra or affirmation that helps you to really stay in that, I choose mindset, I'm living on my own terms?
So I do want to leave listeners with this, to remember I am powerful and I create my reality. Remember that.